Hey guys, Magic here. Today I am joined by Draven. Alright, so been doing more research on the psychological abuse thing. And it's shed a lot of light onto some things for me. It's like I always thought that I was chosen, so to speak, by these people to because I was weak or I seemed like an easy target or whatever. But people that are easy targets or just weak people in general are really not that valuable to them because they can't destroy something that's already quote unquote broken. So they typically choose people that are vulnerable but still strong. So it's kind of like a challenge. They like a challenge. And that, like one of my exes, he used to always tell me that he didn't feel like I knew when to quit. He said that I was always, like he would break me temporarily and I would become submissive, compliant. But then at some point the fight would rise back up at me. He said it was more fun because he just couldn't seem to break me. They want to have that stronger person though so they can break them down because it gives them an ego boost to do so. Gives them their ego fill of like, oh, well, you know, all the things that they do that boost their ego. Like they want someone who's going to build them up, make them feel better about themselves. And once they have their fill of that, they try to destroy it because that helps their ego as well. So they don't ever, and will never consider the person that they're hurting. They only consider what they want, what they need. They don't ever consider the person that they're with. They don't care about them or their needs. That's why it's so important for us survivors to take charge of our own life and our own healing, because if we don't, they're not going to help. They're not going to give us any closure. They do not care. Once they're done, they're done. And a lot of times they don't ever really get done until we tell them that we are done. I mean, they're great actors. They will cry. I had one of my exes, he would force himself on me, and then after he did so, he would cry. He would immediately break into hysterical fit of tears, crying about how bad he felt, how awful he felt. And it was very confusing for me because I felt like I should be the one upset, but he was so upset I couldn't be. I was very confused. I felt wrong for feeling upset. I felt wrong for being angry at him because he was crying. They will show him lots of emotions outwards and to make you feel like they've changed. I had many of my exes that would act like they changed, and then as soon as I believed that things were getting better and that they had really changed, they would immediately revert back into old ways. It's just a form of manipulation. They'll make you feel guilty for setting boundaries. Like whenever you tell them no or I don't want to do that, they will like push at you and make you feel bad. Like I had one ex who would just kind of like pout and make it about him and how hurt he was and how I must not love him or be attracted to him because I would turn him down sometimes. And then sometimes they'll use things like anger to get your compliance. Like they'll act really angry all of a sudden and blow up and scare you into thinking they're going to hurt you, hurt someone else, hurt themselves, or something worse. And then you're like, okay, fine, I will do what you want because you do not want to have that happen. And I know I would usually do this without him, but unfortunately every other adult in my house that can watch them right now is sleeping, and this is like the only time I'm going to be able to do this because when they wake up I have other things I have to do. So I do apologize for having my kid in the background playing with Iron Man. What is often I hear from like my friends and even myself is that I've had situations like this is that they very often knew something was a little off when it started, but they knew something felt weird. But with only a few moments of hurt here and there and the rest of it being good, they didn't really have enough to go on to just be like, oh, well, no, this is definitely bad. I'm cutting it off. Like, for me, I'd always be like, yeah, they're just having a bad day, you know? Like, they would go through we'd have one fight, and they would lose it a little bit. I'm like, we were fighting. People would say or do things that they don't mean to during fights. or they would act really weird one day or really hateful one day. And I'm like, yeah, they're probably just having a bad day because all the other days were good. But by the time I realized something was happening, I was already trapped. So, and if I've gotten better to where now if like you start to act controlling or you start to act weird like that, and it's like more than once or twice, I start to be like, I don't know, I start to pull back because I'm like, no, I don't want to risk that again. Now, everyone does have bad days, which is why I give them a couple of times and, see how they respond after their bad day is over, because whether or not, they genuinely try to make things better, genuinely start to work on it, and if they don't, then we don't continue. If they do, then I'll keep giving them a chance until it's obvious that they're just not willing to make that change. I mean, after all, nobody is perfect. Everyone has character flaws. And, a few times here or there don't seem that serious until it is. Very often we just kind of keep, because it's so small, we keep pushing it off until it feels too heavy, almost like it's a feeling of being crushed. I very often described in my relationships feeling like my soul was being crushed, my very being. But I don't know, whenever I try to bring it up with them, they'd always be like, oh, well, it was just that one time. And you're not, and because, I would bring it up or be like, hey, this is how I'm feeling about things that have happened. They're like, yeah, you're just stuck in the past and you won't forgive me. Even though I had forgiven them, I just was trying to make sense of what was happening. And they kept doing the same thing, so it wasn't just that one time, but they'd always focus on one time. And it's hard to say something's a mistake when you keep doing it. It's not a mistake happens once. If you do it multiple times, it is a choice. They're always trying to collect data on the person that they're with. So it's very important as a survivor of this kind of abuse that you learn to be less open. Now, that's really hard for me because I'm a very open person. I'm an open book. Anyone that knows me knows that I'm just really open. I don't care. But it's very important not to be an open book, because if you are with the wrong person, it will come back to bite you. And I'm working on it. It's just really hard because I'm so used to being such an honest and open person. I mean, and one of the reasons why they focus on like one thing or like one time or whatever is because they know that if they, or like whenever they're telling you, whenever they bring up your own insecurities or complaints or whatever that it is, they know that they give you a spoonful of the truth, it'll be easier for the poison to go down. And very often, like, I found myself questioning if, like, maybe they were just clueless, they were unaware of what they were doing, maybe they really didn't know, but they do. It's so painfully obvious that they do. Once you're out of it anyway. When you're in it, it's really confusing. And sometimes even afterwards, you're like, did they really, how could they know? Because it's so hard to believe that that kind of evil exists in the world, but it does. And it's just crazy to me to think those kind of people can exist. Because... And another thing that some of them would do is whenever I try to talk to them about the problem, they would immediately just grow silent or just tell me, oh, well, I don't want to have a fight, so I'm not going to say anything. And I'm like, I'm not trying to fight with you. I'm just trying to tell you how I feel. I'm trying to make sense of what is happening right now. Very often whenever I'd push, they'd be like, if you truly loved me, or, if you were a better partner, you wouldn't act like this, or that wouldn't happen. I mean, they can be selfish, and they can make you feel selfish. They'll tend to try to sabotage any type of self-care or any boundaries that you try to set, or anytime that you refuse to live in the fear that they try to create. Like, I know that, like, anytime I tried to take care of myself, they would immediately suddenly have a problem, have a meltdown, do anything, like even just take a bath, or like sit down to color a picture or something. It would always suddenly be a crisis that I had to attend to. Or anytime that I would be like, no, this is a boundary that we cannot cross, they would just flip out, get suddenly explosively angry, and lose their crap. Anytime I tried to do anything fun, they would also try to sabotage that. Like, I remember I was with one, and I was supposed to be taking my son to a birthday party, and he knew about this birthday party for 2 months. 2 months prior to the birthday party, he knew about it. And so that weekend, he plans to have some of his friends come out, which was fine because we were still going to the birthday party. Well, that morning, I told him that he needed to make sure his friends packed up so that way we could take them home after the birthday party. because he had to be home by a certain time. And he said that we'd have enough time. I knew we wouldn't. So I told them that they needed to pack. But when they asked him, he told them, no, you don't need to pack because we're going to have enough time to come back home. And we'll get your stuff. We got within 30 minutes of where the birthday party was being held, when suddenly they're like, how long is this birthday party going to be? And I told them when it got out. And they're like, it's a bit of a drive back to your apartment, don't you think? I was like, yeah, it is. And then they didn't have their stuff, and they had to be home by that certain time, and they weren't going to be able to make it. So instead of telling them that instead of dropping me off, like you should have done with my son, and gone back and getting their stuff and coming back and getting us, he decides that because they have to go, none of us are going, because that would take too much time. I will never make it. And no matter how much I argued it, that he wouldn't do it. And so we turned back around, and I had to break a promise to my kid that it's first because he did that. And that's the only promise I've ever broken to him. And it made me so mad. Made me livid. It's actually what led to our breakup. One of our break of our engagement. But they do things like that. They try to isolate you, and it's works. It does. It's one of those things that just and they do it so easily too, because like little things like that may seem insignificant, but no, it's just so easy how they isolate, because like they'll have you break promises, break engagements, break prior obligations before you know no one wants to hang out with you, no one wants to talk to you because you can't ever go. You never, any of you say you can, you never show up. Which makes you look bad, which is why which helps with their illusion that you are the problem and that they're fine, because you seem like the bad guy, because no one really understands or knows what's actually happening. They'll even say that they did say sorry when you know that they didn't, but they'll tell you that they did, and then you start to question if maybe you're just not remembering. It's kind of like gaslighting you. They always want to be correct. I know I dated this one guy. One of the things that always upset me is that he would say things like, we'd be in the middle talking, and I would say my opinion, I would even say like, okay, we'd be talking and we'd about the different subjects and some of these, and I would say what I felt was right, and he would say what he felt was right. And when they differed, I would be like, okay, well, here are some facts and studies and research that I've done to back up my side. Trying to have the creative discussion, to see where he was coming from, so he could understand where I was coming from. Instead of having the discussion with me, instead of telling me anything to back up his side, he would just say, oh, honey, it's okay, you can be wrong, and just walk away, or refuse to talk about it if we were in the car after that. It would frustrate me so much, because I'm like, just because I disagree with you doesn't mean that I'm wrong, especially if you're not even willing to try to back up your side. And one of the reasons why they want to apologize is because they don't see what they're doing as hurtful or wrong. Like one of my exes, he used to always tell me that he was not going to say he was sorry because he felt justified in what he'd done. He said that he knew he was probably wrong because me and his mom felt like he was wrong, but because we have a better sense of right and wrong than he does. But that because he felt justified, he was not going to apologize. He was not going to say sorry or nothing, because as far as he was concerned, he'd done nothing wrong. And they see any form of disagreement as like disrespect. Like my one ex, he'd always just be like, oh, well, if you want to push it and have this discussion with me, then you obviously don't respect me. You don't respect my boundaries, which was dumb. It was dumb. And because you should be able to have a creative discussion with someone and get both sides without it being an argument and without being disrespectful. It's just so frustrating. Anyway, guys, that's all I can do for right now, because I need a minute. I'll let you guys know more about what I figure out and these revelations and stories that I'm willing to share. Until then, go out and spread the love, because love always wins.